Welcome to the special council meeting tonight. Of course, this is a postponement from last Monday night due to the inclement weather, which it wasn't at all. I just would say, I know there's a lot of motion in the room. There's some issues tonight that fired people up, and of course we'll expect this Bowen level of decorum. Thank you very much. So we'll proceed with the approval of the agenda. Introduction of late items here at home.
Yeah, we have a few. First, there's a on-table package that all of you should have. First item relates to item 3.3 of the agenda, which is regarding the Carolina Amendment Bylaw, number 469.
Okay.
There's two items regarding 12.2, which is regarding the fire hall. And an item regarding 8.1, which is an image of the library lot on Carter Road. Councillor Fast provided that.
Yeah, got that, thank you.
Okay, and that's all.
All right. Thank you very much. So the approval of the agenda, is there anybody want to add anything, any omissions? All right. Move. Second, please. David, all in favor? Thank you. We'll move on. Public comments. Folks, what do you got?
Quite a few tonight. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just for timing wise.
Okay.
First is Roger McGilvery regarding the new fire hall.
Come on up, Roger.
That would be great, thank you.
30 seconds? Yes.
I'll try not to be too worked up.
All right.
Good evening, Mayor Ander and members of council. My name, as you all know, is Roger McGilvery. I live at Belterra on Bowen Island, and I'm here to speak just one more time about locating the new fire hall on Lot 3 of the community lands. And I just want everybody to understand that, and I want to quickly mention that I don't like being here. I don't like to criticize council, and I don't like to alienate members of the fire department. But this is just the subject of building the fire hall on Lot 3 is just way too important to me. So because I've been on Bowen for 43 years, and I've been watching, and I've sometimes been participating in the gradual changes in Bowen Island's downtown. And I've been trying all the time. I try to imagine the future. And there's just never been any place in that future for a fire hall in the village of Snook Cove. And I don't really need to tell you why. There's a lot of reasons why, but because in the agenda for tonight's meeting, the 470-something page agenda or whatever it is, there's 43 really well-written letters that are telling you why. And then a while ago, I heard that there was going to be a bunch of submissions in support of Lot 3 for the new fire hall. And I thought perhaps now I'll finally hear some good reasons why Lot 3 is the right choice. But unfortunately, I was disappointed. Of the 32 letters that were in support of building the fire hall on Lot 3, 29 of them were identical, 2-sentence letters, and the first sentence just expressed support for the Lot 3 site. There was no reason, just yes, I support that. And the second sentence supported the design, and at this point, I don't have any issue with the design. Another letter of support for the Lot 3 site comes from the Hood Point West residents, and I do take issue with a couple of their comments. This is a quote: Bowen Islanders voted 81% in favor of borrowing up to $3 million to build the new fire hall and emergency response center on Lot 3, and we all know that that's incorrect. But it's an understandable mistake because the municipality's referendum results announcement was carefully worded, and it gave that incorrect impression. And a second comment from Hood Point West says that if the new hall was built on Lot 1, it would be more than 8 kilometers from their homes, which is, and this is a quote, "it is not fair." That's their words. Hood Point West residents knew when they bought their property that their location was more than 8 kilometers from a fire hall, and there was never any guarantee that it would be moved closer. And so for a few $100 extra costs in fire insurance, they're suggesting that we should change forever the downtown of Bowen Island. Another one of the supporting letters, there was 3 of them besides the 29, mentions problems with the Lot 1 site, such as a fallen tree blocking the road. And that could be a problem. But a tree across the road, Miller Road near Terminal Creek, would block access to the whole north end of the island, or a tree across the road by the old fire hall, actually the present fire hall, would block access to the whole west and south sides of the island. And a tree across by the sewage treatment plant would block access to Dorman Road, Valhalla, Queen Charlotte Heights. It's an issue wherever the fire hall is built, and Bowen Island Fire Department has had to deal with that issue before. The same letter mentions traffic congestion at the school, and that's a point. But all I can say is that the drivers and people, and especially children, they get out of the way of a fire truck very quickly. And I can't imagine losing more than maybe a few seconds in an emergency run past the school. And as well, the school only gets busy a couple of times a day for 15 minutes. The fire hall call happening when it's busy at the school, I figure, is less than 1 chance in 32. The same writer also mentions diminishing, and this is a quote, the very spirit of your loyal volunteers. And that is really important. Being a volunteer fireman is probably the most demanding and time-consuming of all volunteer positions on the island. Everybody appreciates these volunteers. I don't think everybody appreciates how much time is spent learning to use the equipment and learning how to do the job properly. And on top of that, being called out at no notice at any time of the day or night to deal with an emergency. These volunteers deserve to have the very best equipment that we can afford and to have an operations center that they'll be proud to work out of. And I have no doubt whatsoever that we can build an excellent operations center elsewhere on our community lands. One other writer who identified himself as a member of the Fire Hall Facility Steering Committee, FFSC, because I'm going to say it several times, expressed that they had originally supported the Lot 1 site, but some concerns changed their thinking to now support the Lot 3 site. These concerns were lack of water and sewer infrastructure, which are both non-issues. There's Cove Bay water mains on both the north and the south sides of the Lot 1 site. As well, concerning sewage, there's inexpensive and pretty simple solutions to that problem. But in addition, I want to mention that I will support the municipality borrowing the money needed to provide sewer service to Lot 1 long before I would approve or support borrowing over $4 million to build the community center. We have to do things in the correct order. Lot 1 has been rezoned. We should service it, we should subdivide it, recover some of our expenses. And then we can start spending on major projects like the community center. The same writer, the member of the FFSC, comments that, and this is a quote, once the proposed fire hall plans were laid over the only viable and available location on Lot 1, it became clear that substantial material had to be removed from that site and a costly retaining wall would be required prior to construction. Well, you don't take plans from a building on a flat site and you lay them on a slope site. It's not intelligent construction. You can still build almost the same building on the slope site at a reasonable cost if the changes in grade are taken into consideration by the architects. As well, concerning the potential sale value of the Lot 3 site, this FFFC member quotes a developer as saying, quote, that this would be a money-losing proposition and it was highly unlikely to be of interest to any other developer. One way to ensure that, of course, would be to build a fire hall there. But the successful and profitable sales of the small lots at Snug Cove House right across the street shows that the fire hall site at Lot 3 is worth somewhere between $2.5 million and $4.2 million. This is opportunity lost, and it absolutely has to be factored in as part of the cost of building that new fire hall. And I wasn't going to mention this, but the former member of the FFSC also says, and I hate to do this, but I remind council that this is quote, I remind council that a favorable referendum to borrow the money to build this fire hall on this site was held in August of 2017. Well, we know that's not true. Unfortunately, I have to say once again that the referendum was only about borrowing the money. It did not mention the location. The decision by the previous council to locate the new fire hall on Lot 3 was based on incorrect information, and the opportunity to fix that is right now, it's tonight. Council should follow this suggestion of Councillors Fast, Hawking, and Winan and create a major projects working group that will vet the input it receives and make the best decision it can with full and correct information. Tonight, Mayor Ander and Council will be voting on a motion to ask the architects to proceed with working drawings for the new fire hall on the Lot 3 site. If Council approves this motion, They're ignoring the fact that the Advisory Planning Commission did not support the fire hall on Lot 3. Ignoring the fact that the Community Lands Workshop report from last June overwhelmingly recommended that the fire hall not be located on Lot 3. They're ignoring the fact that outside of Hood Point West writers, there was only one letter of support for the Lot 3 site at the public hearing. They're ignoring the 43 individual letters attached to tonight's agenda, which are written in opposition to the Lot 3 location for the new fire hall. And they're ignoring the fact that so much of the information they're basing their decision on is either incorrect or inaccurate. You're ignoring a lot of good people, good Bowen Island people who are really thinking a lot about what needs to be done here. So please do the right thing tonight. Do not put the fire hall on Lot 3. And thank you for not ignoring me.
Thanks, Roger. Just a name and address too, if you don't mind.
It's Paul White Cotton, address 1321 Eagle Cliff Road. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. My comment and question is for Mayor Ander regarding item 5 on the agenda, the new fire hall. Your Worship, on September 29th, 2018, during the all candidates meeting at the Bowen Island Community School, when asked by facilitator Andrea Raymond, would you raise taxes in your term as mayor, you responded by saying, quote, "We will do everything we possibly can. We do not want to raise taxes, absolutely not, and we certainly won't be raising taxes for amenities. I can guarantee you that," end quote. If the fire hall is to be built on Lot 3 in accordance with the proposed Johnson-Davidson conceptual drawings, the cost of construction alone would run taxpayers a debt of at least $3 million, and over time the cost would be far greater. What I wanted to ask you was, how do you plan, if this was the case, to pay for this and uphold the commitment you made to Bowen Island taxpayers on September 29th, a commitment that undoubtedly earned you votes that afternoon? Thank you.
I'm not required to respond to you, Paul, but I will because that was brought up before. And that was not in the context, it was for the community center. It was not for other amenities or the fire. It wasn't for the fire hall, it was definitely for the community center. At the school, I remember.
If I can interject for a second, during the fire hall referendum, the information that was released going up to it was made clear to taxpayers that it would be, I think it was $64 a year, tax increase to cover the $3 million debt. And that was clearly articulated for a good year before at least 6 months before the referendum.
Just the part of the quote that speaks to me was the part that said, "We will do everything we possibly can, but we do not want to raise taxes." And that, I think, should be reflected in how the government's.
I stand by that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Tim Rhodes?
Tim Rhodes, 951 Village Drive. I'm here speaking on behalf of the board of the Bowen Island Health Center. Just to introduce those people who are not all here. Colleen O'Neill, Ken MacArthur, Sherry Johnson, Alva McNestry, Clive Jones, Jen McGowan, Steve Mitchell, and Sue McIntyre. The Foundation is grateful to Council for its partnership and support of our efforts over the last 4 years to address the community's clear need for increased access to health care on Bowen. Based on our healthcare survey results, the 2014 and 2017 Vital Conversations report of the Community Foundation, the size of the pledges we have already received, and the comments we hear every day, timely completion of a health center is a top priority of this community, and we have been told a top priority of this council. Dr. Zandy's closure of her practice on Bowen and the recent ferry cancellations due to weather have only brought the need closer to a crisis situation. Recent Facebook threads voice fears and concerns of Bowen Islanders about access to on-island health care. This health center is a basic and urgent need for the community. It is not a nice-to-have amenity. On a personal note, I had a heart attack a year ago, And had this happened during the worst of the recent storms, I suspect I would have died, because we do not have the facilities on the island to provide the triage necessary to give those in emergency situations a fighting chance. In April of last year, Council unanimously approved resolution number 18159, which reads, subject to the Bowen Island Health Centre Foundation receiving registration as a charity pursuant to the Income Tax Act, Council is prepared to enter into an agreement to lease with the foundation in order to provide up to a 0.2 hectare portion of Community Lands Lot 3 to the foundation under a long-term lease at a nominal rate for use as the Bowen Island Health Centre, and to waive the necessary application fees. Resolution 18160 directed staff to undertake an application for subdivision of Lot 3 upon receipt of confirmation of registration as a charity. We received that confirmation in June of 2018. In October of 2018, Resolution 18412 authorized staff to proceed with option 2, which reduced the lot size to 0.35 acres, which is less than 10% of the area of Lot 3. Council's decision marked key milestones towards making a health center a reality. Now we are urging Council to follow through with this previously agreed plan so that we can proceed with fundraising, building, and staffing this urgently needed community asset. With our plans for the health center gaining momentum, we are deeply concerned by recent suggestions to fundamentally alter the existing plan by A, moving the facility off Lot 3, B, requesting a significant payment for the land instead of a nominal lease, C, suggesting a smaller facility, and or D, developing the health center as part of a commercial residential development. These do not represent minor adjustments. In several respects, any one of these options would have the potential to be a major setback or even a failure to our efforts and the timely completion of a health center. We ask Council to carefully consider how this significant and sudden change of direction could impact our project at its current stage of development, and the compelling reasons to stay the course, which include project timing, funding, and future expansion needs. To repeat, the health center is a basic and urgent need for this community, not simply a nice-to-have amenity. In summary, our request of Council is to immediately honor the resolutions 18159, 18160, and 18412. We appreciate that the conclusions of the Mayor's Standing Committee may move the location of the facility. However, we ask that any change in location be within Lot 3, which is the optimal location for the health center. This said, the health center will be a facility the community will be proud of, and it deserves a very public location. With this assurance from Council, we are prepared to proceed with preliminary design and fundraising to avoid losing the next 3 months, which are vital to maintaining our projected time frame. We sent each of you a detailed letter expanding on these repercussions, and we implore you to read and consider these in your deliberations. The health of the island is in your hands. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening.
All understood. Thank you, Tim.
Robin Fenton.
Rob?
Good evening, everybody. Robin Fenton, 958 Spyglass Road, and I'm here tonight representing Birch, Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing. 2 topics. One is funding, and I believe that Raj is going to give a report on our request for the multi-year core funding. So an update from us, and I think I did send this out by emails. We received a grant from the Van City Community Foundation, which is very exciting, and that is project funding. So it will fund our next phase for the specific project, but we still are in need of operational funding. So I just wanted to reiterate that. I'll find out soon what the decision is on that first application, and if it's not successful, we will be applying for likely for the community grants in April. And we have submitted with the municipality support, we've submitted an application to the Bowen Island Community Foundation for some funding as well. So we'll see in the next few months how that's going. So that's the funding update. Next, I wanted to address Lot 3. And Tim, thank you very much for all your wonderful words. He's reiterated, said a lot about the different history of it. We're in a slightly different position. So what I wanted to do is just, thank you so far for your support of wanting to give us land for affordable housing. I think everybody's in favor of that. And I just wanted to reconfirm that we're partners. So Birch and BIM are partners in this. And I really feel like we can't do it without each other. You need us, we need you. So we're in this together, and being good partners, we want to be flexible, we want to be amenable. So I'm certainly not here to say for or against the motions that are in front of you, but I just do want to explain the impact that it'll have on us. Also, one point that I did want to say is, for sure, if we're given the land under the details that have been agreed to so far, please trust us that we will do our best to absolutely maximize that land. We'll be using it to its best and highest value. We'll be trying to develop as much as we can. We have so far said approximately 20 units, but it definitely looks like we know we can get more on there, so whether we phase that, but we'll certainly be doing our absolute best to make the most use of that land. And where we are at this stage, we're just about, as I said, we're getting this funding from Van City. We're just about to enter this early concept and feasibility stage. So if there is the motion tonight to sort of pause and take this 90 days to revisit Lot 3, it does essentially put our project on hold until we get that decision. So we really need, there's a little bit of work we can do with community engagement and maybe a survey in this next phase, but most of the work in this phase is site specific. So we really do need to have confirmation of the site, of that specific lot, and that's the work that we'll be doing with this funding. So I'm very conscious, I do not want to spend any of this money on the wrong lot and redo work or waste it. So we really need that 100% guarantee from the municipality, from council and mayor, that this is the site, you've absolutely got it, and this is the one to invest this time and effort into it, and the funding. So, yes, so that's what we were hoping out of tonight. We'll get some clear direction one way or the other. And either way, we look forward to working with you. We really see this as a partnership, and we'd love to keep the momentum going. We've got this funding, we're set to go, and we'll just see what everybody decides tonight. And either way, we look forward to working with you. I've spoken to one of the potential committee members, and I'm hopeful that this process, if it is chosen to go that way, that 90 days will be inclusive of us, and we'll be consulted throughout it and have some input on all of that. So either way, I'm sure we'll be working together, but just so you understand the impacts on our project. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Robin, and that obviously is the intent of this little pause, and we'll talk about that later, but
Yeah.
it's definitely the
Thanks,
intent.
Robin.
Thank you.
So you've already agreed.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ander and Council. I've been here before talking about the fire hall, and that's what I would like to talk to again. My name is Tim Hardy, and the address is 472 Smugglers Cove Road. I'm one of those people in Good Point West. The reasons, I was very impressed when I came to the council meetings last year and saw the process that was taking place with the fire hall. The amount of community engagement that happened then, first reading, second reading, third reading by council, the tours of the old fire hall, leading up to a unanimous vote by council to move forward with the referendum. There was a clear understanding that that fire hall was to be built on Lot 3. The plans were there. There was a sign on the property on Lot 3. For anybody to say that the referendum, those 80% of the people that made it, 81% of the people who voted positively, that went out and voted, didn't understand the fire hall was on Lot 3, I think is wrong. We all knew it was on Lot 3, or most of us did, or certainly should have known based on the information. We knew that the taxes that we would pay to borrow $3 million would be approximately $64 per year for the next 30 years. Again, that was clearly stated in all the literature that we read. The whole process, it was very, very comprehensive over many, many years. Information from experts, committee members, people who worked their butts off to come up with the recommendations they did. I can't believe that at this point there isn't confidence to move forward in the community, and that people would say, based on the referendum results, and prior council's hard work on this and the committee's hard work on this, that there's enough reason now to reverse everything and say we're not going to build as planned on Lot 3. The community of Hood Point West, when we talk about letters, and this is the main thing I want to point out here, is that this is one email from Hugh Freeman, the president of the Strata, and myself, the vice president. But it represents, as we listed them here, 20 voters from Hood Point West, all of whom feel that, and it is a question of fairness. I've heard some things said about some people wanting to lower their insurance premiums. It's very annoying to hear that. This is a safety issue. It's not about some people trying to save some money. We are the only community, if the fire hall is built on Lot 1, that would be excluded from fire safety. And the fire underwriting survey statistics clearly show that if you're outside 8 kilometers, the chances of a fire emergency actually saving a home declines dramatically. And that's just not right. And I think in our official community plan over many years, I know the committee took this into account when they looked at it. They felt there was a real need to have everybody on Bowen Island within that 8-kilometer limit. And this is an opportunity to do so. And everything is there, the 81% referendum approval, unanimous approval of the last council, all of the things that have been done give us the opportunity to move forward. So at Hood Point West, we would certainly encourage this council to vote in favor of the fire hall in Lot 3 as it was currently planned and approved. So thank you very much.
Freeman, regarding the new fire hall.
Yeah, thank you. I thought Michael was gonna be here. Didn't he want to hear me?
He's outside the door.
He's a,
Didn't want to hear you.
there he
There he is.
is.
Michael, you're just on time. The main speaker is here.
Well, I've never been described as making sense.
No, the main speaker, not the main voter. I would just, I'm not gonna reiterate everything that Tim said and what's in the letter. When I heard McGilvery speak, I thought, where have you been? You know, like, we appreciate some of your comments, but where have you been for the last 2 years? I would suggest to the council, if you haven't had an opportunity, I'm sure you have, but to look at the letters, not only from our own Hood Point West strata, that emphasizes the issue of safety. I mean, we are on the island, and to say that we, we're just out in Hood Point West and it doesn't really matter is not right. You have an opportunity now to correct something that has been wrong for years. In that the fire hall, now that we need to rebuild it, should be built in a place where everybody has access to the same safety issue. The second thing that I would suggest is important to emphasize. It comes in the letter from Brian Biddlecombe. Those guys have worked for us for free for years. And yeah, they have a little party every year, and they get to wear a license plate on their trucks. But they contribute a huge amount to this community, so to say to them that they can't have a couple of parking spots, regardless of the price. This is a facility that has been planned for the next 50 years. So it's a big facility, sure, but it's been planned for a long period of time. So I think that's really important for the council to recognize, and I appreciate, I'm not going to be negative about what you're trying to do. I think it's a good idea to look at things if you're a new councilor. But please appreciate that this has been going on for a couple of years. And David, you were at a meeting before when I also spoke on this issue, and you said, you had different issues at that time. And I said, I'm a little worried about that guy going on council. And so we asked you directly, how do you feel about the fire hall and where it should be sited? And you thought, I'm in support of the fire hall on Lot 3. So why would you not support it now? I think it's reasonable to look at things. So I'm hopeful that you'll look at this. The only suggestion I would make is that, because there's an issue here now, there's people in the room here that have been involved in development on the island, and now they're criticizing something that the community has planned for a long time. Kathy would probably support the fact, or know the fact, that I've been into that office probably once every 3 or 4 months for the last, what's happening now, Kathy? What's happening now? Oh, it's being sent out to the architects, it's being this, it's being that. So now it's here. And I would be really appreciative of the committee getting on with it. I think the community needs to do something for a change. Now, the siting of it is next to the health center. People are gonna come to the health center, and Tim Rose probably wouldn't have been able to walk very far, given his condition, or anybody else. There are gonna be some parking spots there at the fire hall. Whether you call it the fire hall or fire hall parking spots or whatever, but those spaces are needed. It's an emergency center, it's not just a fire hall. So I hope we can proceed in the right direction here, and appreciate that, you know, you're new, you've been looking at this, and I think that's really good, because we need to have people looking at things in a serious way. But on this one, I think we need to move ahead as soon as possible. We've been waiting for a long time for a fire hall outside. Thank you.
Thanks, Hugh.
I don't have any pieces of paper. I tried to hold myself back.
That it? Okay, thank you all very much. Okay, so the approval of the consent agenda, does anybody have anything that they want to pull out of there?
Yeah. Information item 12.18.
Okay. 12.18.
12.18.
Find it here. It's way at the back.
Page 409.
Yeah, I got it here now. Okay. All right. Info item pulled. Anybody else? Okay.
Area 3.13.
3.13?
Yeah.
Thank you.
The transportation.
Do we usually pull info items?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're received as part of the consent agenda, so it is
Okay,
appropriate.
thank you.
All right, we'll move that to section 10.
I told 12.18. What was that?
3.13.
12.8, 3.13. Morning.
Just a question, will Emma be here this evening?
I don't think so.
No. Okay, I'll hold my question then.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. And can I have a move to receive the consent agenda? Modified, thank you, second.
Yeah.
David, thank you, all in favor? Thank you. Let's move. Delegations, we have none. Staff reports. Raj?
So I've got a verbal report, most of which Robin had covered in her address to council. But at the last council meeting, Birch had applied for funding from BIP, and essentially council had suggested that they apply to the Bowen Island Foundation. However, Birch, I guess you have to have you have to be a charitable organization to apply. They didn't have charitable status, but if you don't have charitable status, then you can partner with somebody who has charitable status.
Okay.
So Birch, I reached out to the Bowen Island Community Foundation, and they had suggested that Birch partner with the municipality. So they applied for grant funding through the Bowen Island Foundation with the municipality as partner.
Excellent. Great. Thanks for your help in that. Any questions?
For how much?
I believe it's for $15,000.
Thank you. I like Robin's delivery better. She needs money.
Well, that's great. I'm glad that worked too.
Thank you.
And there's also an opportunity for Birch to apply for the normal community grants when the time comes, which is
April?
very shortly. Yeah,
Well,
I think it's before that.
municipal match.
Yes. All right, moving on to the bylaws, 6.1. I think Shauna, you're gonna take the lead on that. Shauna Jennings, thank you.
Good evening, thank you. So I'm here tonight to present the recommendations. Our purpose is to provide council with a draft loan authorization bylaw for the purpose of demonstrating the municipality's commitment to their portion of the funding for the community center project. On January 23rd, 2019, we submitted a grant to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program for $7.9 million to go towards the construction of the community center. That has a total project cost estimate of $14.5 million. From the date of the January 23rd, we have 30 days in which to demonstrate secured funding for the remaining project funds. Which brings us basically to today. The revenues for the project, we've got the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Grant application, which is worth close to $8 million. Municipal reserves at 1.2. Community fundraising is at 1.3 million. And the amount we're bringing forward today for a loan authorization bylaw is just over $4 million, with the total revenues there at 14.5 for the project. Which brings me to the loan authorization bylaw, which is why we're here this evening. In order to remain eligible for our grant application, the municipality needs to show secured funding for the rest of the project. We need to receive third reading this evening as evidence that a referendum will proceed to secure that project funding. After third reading, the legislation will dictate that we have a referendum within 80 days, which brings us to May 4th, 2019. And a positive referendum result at that date is required for our grant application to remain eligible and to for us to be eligible for the close to $8 million which we have applied for. So what does that just over $4 million look like in terms of the community? $2 million has always been a part of our funding strategy, and that would be tax neutral based on the amount of money that the municipality currently pays to rent Municipal Hall, as well as various recreation spaces. The $40,000 there covers the security against the loan default, which is held in trust by the Municipal Finance Authority and would be refunded to BIM with interest at loan expiry. The remaining $2 million would have an impact on taxes and an annual increase of $45 for the average residential property. It's important to note, just in regards to all of those points, that the borrowing is dependent on a positive outcome of the grant submission, which we are expecting in the fall of 2019. Borrowing would occur once all other project funds have been committed. Only the amount needed to complete the project would be borrowed, and that fundraising is ongoing and will continue throughout the duration of the project. Communication strategy that has been developed, and the key messages there will include information about the referendum, ongoing fundraising, and as well as the importance of a positive referendum result in order to receive the grant funding and to the success of the project. The communication strategy will involve public open houses, infographics, social media, and newsletters to subscribers. The opportunity that we have before us hasn't come around in a long time. This is the first community-based facilities grant money that has been available from the federal and provincial government since 2008.
The program has committed $134 million to British Columbia. I would like to point out that Bowen Island Municipality is one of the only communities in BC without a community center. And we do have a shovel-ready project that meets the grant eligibility, and the grant does have a high chance of succeeding. We do need to achieve third reading tonight and move forward with a referendum in order to secure close to $8 million from the federal and provincial government. And the positive referendum result at that time would be necessary. Which brings me forward to the recommendations, and those are that the bylaw, loan authorization bylaw, be read a first, second, and third time this evening. That council appoint staff as a chief election officer and deputy chief election officer for a May 4th, 2019 referendum, and that council approve the question for the referendum to fund the community center project. And the question would be asking if people are in favor of council enacting the loan authorization bylaw, which authorizes the municipality to borrow a sum not to exceed $4,040,000 to construct the proposed community center.
That's it?
For me.
All right. Questions, anybody? That's a lot of information. Maureen?
Two questions. The $45 per property over 30 years?
Over 30 years, yes.
And then the second question just has to do with reminding me how much we're currently paying for rent per year on this building?
On this building and the recreation facilities that we're also renting,
Yes.
it's $127,000. So the breakdown there is that the annual debt servicing, sorry Raj, just 1 second. The remaining, once that $127,000 is paid against the debt, the remaining annual debt servicing cost is $99,300, and that would be covered by the $45 a year.
Okay, thank you.
Rob?
Yeah, thanks, Sean, for your report, and I will be supporting moving forward with this bylaw. I've sat on, I think, 3 financial advisory committees already on the community center. I'm happy with the 15% contingency that's built in. I think that gives us some comfort that if there are overruns, we're going to have the funds to cover that. You've done some good work on the operating side of it as well, so we know what we're getting into as far as long-term operating costs, which we'll talk a little about later, which we don't have at the fire hall, but I'm glad we have that. I think there's a bit of optimism in some of the numbers, but it's something I think that we can work with, and that gives me some confidence. Also the fact that, this is we don't need to borrow this money. This is contingent on us getting the $8 million, and as you mentioned, this is a one-time opportunity. I don't think it's been since 2008.
Before the Olympics.
Before the Olympics, such as infrastructure money like that. So this is really the opportunity to go for that. I am, however, worried about, and we're going to be talking about multiple projects right now, millions of dollars coming in, tax rate, and also, maybe dovetailing a bit on, something that Councilor Nicholson brought up is the 30-year amortization. So just a question to Raj. My understanding is $1 million of borrowing equates to about a 1% increase in tax rate to cover that borrowing cost. Is that
Approximately.
It's a bit lower, I think it's 800 some odd thousand. Okay, good. And that's over a 30-year amortization,
Yes.
correct? Yeah. So this is going to be a bigger discussion, I think, and I'd like to have it through the Finance Committee as well, but the 30-year amortization does concern me a bit. I mean, Metro Vancouver, I was at a meeting a month ago, they are switching over to 15-year amortization. It's, at 15, because there's considerable cost savings by not going to 30 years. And I understand the challenges of these multiple millions of dollars we're going to be borrowing, about how much room is there for taxpayers to be able to cover these costs. And I understand that challenge. The flip side is, by having all these projects come through and we're borrowing these millions of dollars, it's making everything more expensive because we're having to amortize them over a longer period of time. and we're shifting things to another generation, and that's a concern that I have. And I think it takes a bit of a broader discussion to see what is our capability, but it's something that that I think we need to keep an eye on moving through all these projects about how much debt can we sustainably carry, and is it the right move to amortize it over a much longer period of time, thereby costing us more money for all our projects. So I just throw that out there as something that I hope that we have a discussion on further down the road. I will be supporting this, and thanks a lot for doing the work on that.
Well, I was just going to say, this bylaw is a mirror image of the one we passed for the fire hall, right? So,
Yes, it is.
so the address for the fire hall lot was in the fire hall Whirlwind bylaw. So, just, you know, to the 30-year comment, which can be looked at in the future, there's also the other school of thought that by the borrowing, it's an asset that's going to last for longer than 30 years, and the people who are going to be using the asset are the ones that are going to be paying for it, rather than the people that might not be using the asset. You know, I'm certainly in support of going ahead with this.
Sure, I don't have many questions. I think we just need to, I'll be voting in favor. I think we need to stay the course. We've already applied for the funding, and in order to be eligible for the funding, we need to pass this motion tonight. I know that fundraising in the community is ongoing as well. And I recall as a library board member, and library foundation board member, the fundraising happens. That's a different project, but it's another community project, and the Cove Commons did come about, and so I have a positive, I have a good feeling about this.
Well, so do I. It's just important to note that we're given the untenable task of raising $4 million in 3.5 months over Christmas, and it was an incredibly tough ordeal, not for me, but for the other people involved, Jackie and Shauna. And we were very inspired by the amount of money and the amount of enthusiasm we did get from the community. And yes, we came up short, there's no question about it. But rather than just throw in the towel, we thought we need to extend the time, which we're doing now, hopefully, by getting this reading through and putting the referendum down, at which time, hopefully, we're not going to need a whole bunch of money, but at that point in time, we take it to the public and say, do you want a community center or not? We've done everything we possibly can. And this is an amazing opportunity to get there, so we're hoping everybody will come along for the ride, including right now. I'll read the recommendation of the bylaw. Oh, David, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I just want to congratulate you on your work. There have been people on this, some of them here have been doing this for longer than the 2 decades that I've been here. And it's about time. So thank you so much for taking this to a level where we can actually feel that we can move forward and actually get a community center. So thanks for doing this, and I certainly support it.
Thanks, David. So I'll read the recommendation of the bylaw number 477-2019, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Loan Authorization Community Center Project. Bylaw number 477-2019 be read a first, second, and third time. The council appoint Dallas Kerr as Chief Election Officer and Sophie Tsinga as Deputy Chief Election Officer for the 2019 referendum. And the council approved the following question to be used in the referendum for funding of the community center project. Are you in favor of the Council of Bowen Island Municipality enacting Bowen Island Municipality Loan Authorization for the Community Center Project, bylaw number 477-2019, which authorizes the Bowen Island Municipality to borrow a sum not to exceed $4,040,000 to construct the proposed community center? Somebody move that? Okay, Rob, second. Okay, David is good. Any further discussion? Thank you. Last question, all in favor? Michael?
Yes,
Thank-
and I don't know how I can change this, but fundraising by hand, absolutely approve and echo the appropriate sentiments read a few seconds ago. Thank you.
I'm sorry, yes, thank you, Michael, and I'm sorry I ignored you. Gets us getting used to it, thank you. All right, we're gonna move on. Correspondence, James Lafferty, President Tunstall Bay Beach Club, Tunstall Bay Beach Club pool. Everybody's obviously read that letter? Okay, about covering the pool. It says pool here. Pool. Any comments? No? So,
A couple of comments. I was a bit surprised by the tone of the letter. And I do remember previous years, swimming lessons have happened in other pools in Bowen Island, private pools, people stepping forward to make their facilities available for the community. And also at beaches sometimes, in some years. It's a matter of having limited resources, and sometimes we have difficulty having enough lessons for everybody. And there are, what's it called when you draw numbers from a hat?
Yep.
And, yes, thank you. And it's a challenge, but we do our best with the resources that we've got in the public realm.
If I could just, for the audience who if they haven't read the letter, Mr. Lafferty is offering, I'll just read it, I'm offering you a chance to save face. I'm about 110K short in my business plan to make the pool an all-year-round pool with hot tubs and some updates, and I want the community to make a difference up. Certainly from a staff perspective and a budget perspective, that 110K we don't currently have.
Anybody else have comment? Should we do it right?
Do we need some sort of
Well, we should have some kind of
resolution or-
resolution that we're not interested in the current.
I would suggest that council receive for information the suggestion from Mr. Lafferty and indicate that the municipality is not interested in or cannot fund $110,000 for
Improvements to the pool.
improvements to the pool.
Ready to cover it.
I'll move that.
Have you got it, Hope? Thank you. Okay, Sue Ellen moved. David?
I'm not
Sure.
Maureen seconded.
Maureen seconded, okay. Any further discussion? Ask a question, all in favor?
Yes, definitely, Gary.
Thank you, Michael. All right. Okay, new business, 8.1. Formation of the Mayor's Standing Committee on Community Lands.
Well, how come we have new business before business arising from the minute?
Just because. So the recommendation here, I'll read the recommendation, and the recommendation is that council rescind the terms of reference for the Mayor's Standing Committee on Community Lands of May 2016, and that council receive for information the report in terms of reference for the Mayor's Standing Committee of Community Lands, February 2019, dated February 5th, 2019. So we did have a previous Mayor's Standing Committee on the Community Lands, which we worked on for about 3 years and came up, and the biggest reason it was formed was to subdivide a piece of property that we could sell and pay off some of the debt, which we did on area 1 of lot 2.
Well, we subdivided it. But we didn't sell it off.
Subdivided, rezoned it so we could sell it off, which we failed to do. So now there's another standing committee being formed, and it's got a little bit, the terms of reference are a little bit different. And as we proceed tonight, you'll see the other part of that. So, is there any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just, I had provided an on-table item. I'm just proposing that the library lot, which is on the corner of Carter Road and Government Road, it's right across, the piece of property that's right across from the Bowen Children's Center. That triangle lot there, as you can see from here, and I've handed out to council a picture of the lot, which is somewhere between half acre and an acre, that this be added. That this be added to the community lands discussion, because this was originally, it's called the library lot because it came about through the Case Hill subdivision, and then it was slated for library use, wasn't used, then it was slated for a water treatment plant. It may still be slated for that, although we've passed the rezoning now. And it just seems to me it's a piece of vacant community land, so I'm proposing that we add it.
And that
here.
was the
And
intent.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
so
yeah, we're
it's part of
including
the
that in
project.
terms of the community lands as well.
Could we
Any
include
bit of
specifically
community
then in the terms of reference maybe? And maybe any other community lands that come
It's all
vacant?
community lands.
My understanding was we changed the name from surplus lands to community lands so that it would encompass all the lands we own.
Correct.
The island plan that we just provisionally approved prior to this meeting says, under plan for the community lands, continue work begun at the 2018 Community Lands Workshop to develop an overall plan for the community lands, including the old library lot. So it's specified in the strat plan at this point.
Okay, and then, that's great. And then as long as that makes it into there, because I'm not sure that people recognize it or know that it's part of the community lands. And my second thing would be, my second addition would be, could we use the words, and other municipal land that may come available? And this is, if we build a new fire hall, what happens to the old fire hall site? And those kinds of things through time, you know, when there is municipal land available. So those were my suggestions for that. But otherwise, I'm in favor, and I think it's a good idea.
Can we, I note that, and I think it's a great idea, because there is going to be more land coming on board. In the future, there's no question about that. Can we add that onto the next section on the standing?
We're not voting on the terms of
Yeah.
No.
I think the committee, and that certainly wasn't the intent with the drafting in the terms of reference, that it include all municipal lands. And that's why actually we have community lands with a lowercase c, so it doesn't include what we traditionally call the surplus lands.
Okay. Well, I'm content, I'm happy to hear that, because I just read it like we've been using it for the past
Yeah.
50
Yeah,
years.
it's a
Community
different-
la-
it's a
about
different
community
thing,
lands. And it was not included in the previous council's community lands work.
If I can suggest, maybe both could just make a note in the minutes that the committee will consider all of the municipalities' lands. Example, the old fire hall site and the old library.
Library law. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right, so can I have somebody move that, or, sorry, Rob, go ahead.
So just a clarification, are we voting on this, or we're not voting on this?
No, it's just for information.
Yeah, so we're not-
Council will
we don't-
needs to rescind the terms of reference for the last.
Because it is a mayor's standing.
So, just a couple of comments on this. I mean, when you go to the mandate and the duties and responsibility, can't agree more that we need to do this with our community lands. And this is something that probably, you know, when we got the community lands 10 years ago, would have been great to have gone and done this, so it could have informed some of the decisions. Well, we're still doing it apparently, right? So, because one of my concerns is, and, you know, we're saying right now, all community lands, but are you also thinking this includes the fire hall site, or is that going to be excluded from the conversation? Because so far it's been excluded from the conversation.
It'll be looked at in the overall concept of the community review of the community lands of Lot 3.
Because, I mean, down today's agenda, we're going to be potentially approving design drawings on Lot 3.
Yeah.
So that'll be a decision already made then, as we're going through this process.
It's an overview of all the community lands. You know, of all the community lands.
It's hard to do an overview.
With restrictions and with what's in place and other things like that.
Because, I mean, this is what we went through with the community lands workshop, which in June, which I thought was fantastically done.
Yeah.
But a lot of, I don't know if the word is anger, disappointment came out of that, saying that, hey, you know, this was the message coming forward, and as, you know, one of the speakers, it was very clear what people wanted to see on Lot 3, but that decision had already been made. It's sort of, why are you asking me now after the decisions have been made already? And it's very hard to do a big overall visioning of all of our community lands when we already have plans for a chunk of the lands that impact all those other decisions, and specifically on Lot 3,
Yeah.
because that's the most valuable lot. I mean, that's sort of the jewel in the crown, sort of say, and that's where, you know, we have the health center, Birch, lots of uses wanting to go in that area. Having made that decision right now already, it makes me wonder, I don't want to use the word sham, but I want this to be a legitimate process where it really feeds into our land use decisions. And if we're making these decisions, and I want to see all of our projects included in that, including the fire hall. Because that fire hall decision will have a ripple down effect on everything we do on the land.
Could I just
Correct.
offer some point of clarification about the community lands workshop? At the beginning of that workshop, Mayor Skeels at the time made clear that the fire hall on Lot 3 was off the table for that workshop. So I just want to make that clear, because that seems to have gotten lost in the last year. So just a point of clarification.
Yeah, and that's fine if you had said that. In that workshop, it was very clear that people were not happy about that. And what I'm saying is, you can say it, but if the intent here is, let's find out what the community wants, what its needs are, and where we're going to locate those needs, then we need to have that full discussion. Right? We can't say yes, but you can't. But we're not going to talk about this just because I said so, and we can't talk about it. That's my concern. And you know, like I said, you know, hindsight 2020 should have been done a long time ago. But I want to make sure that if we're going to drag people out, have them involved in a process, that they feel that this is a legitimate process that's going to lead to something right now. And my concern is that us having already made some decisions, specifically the fire hall, because of the location where it's at, it just happens to be one of the first ones down the pipe right now,
Yeah.
that is going to negatively impact a fruitful discussion on here. And that,
No.
so that's my concern with that. I mean, we're not voting on this, but I just want to state that is a concern that I have. And my suggestion or my hope would be that we include it all in here right now. And I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about that later on.
So, Maureen?
I'd just like to move the recommendation, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
That council rescind,
I'd like to ask to be severed into two motions, please.
okay, that council rescind the terms of reference for the Mayor's Standing Committee on the Community Lands, May 2016. So I'd move that.
Okay. Second.
Gary, I think I heard that. Maureen, I'm sorry, could you just give me the last sentence again, which I don't think I heard?
Sure, it's just one sentence, Michael. That council rescind the terms of reference for the Mayor's Standing Committee on the Community Lands, May 2016. So that's the first part.
Okay, so
Thank you, Maureen, thank you.
Welcome.
you moved that?
Moved.
A second? Okay, any further discussion on that one? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Michael.
And the second recommendation, that council receive for information the report and terms of reference for the Mayor's Standing Committee on the Community Lands, February 2019, dated February 5th, 2019. So I move that.
I'll second
Okay. Okay, discussion.
I asked it to be severed in two so that I could voice my concern about this, another committee being created to study the surplus lands or the community lands now, and what they're going to be used for. In response to Councillor Winans, why has this never been done? It's because we've had a committee who has looked at it, and then it's come back to council, and a councillor has said, oh, we can't do that because. And then we strike another committee, and oh, we can't do that because. And then 3 years later, we strike another committee, do another matrix, and then all of a sudden, we're back to the first decision that the councillor said we couldn't do. So as far as I'm concerned, and we used to have something called the PLUT, the Planning and Land Use Committee, and we rehashed every decision of council, so it was a total waste of time. So my feeling is that if you're going to have a standing committee, it should be a standing committee of all of council, and standing committees of all of council are done in other municipalities. And that way, we can all get the same information, we can all contribute to the discussion, and then it's done, ended, and everybody's there, and they can't say, well, I wasn't happy with that decision from the committee, so I am not going to support that. So I want, ask to be severed so that I don't have to receive something that I think is totally wrong.
Okay, any further discussion? And you've moved it, Mark?
Yes.
Second?
I seconded it.
Thank you, Liz. Sue Ellen, seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. 2 opposed? Opposed, and Rob? Opposed or in favor?
You can abstain, you're either in
Well,
favor or you're opposed.
Actually, I'm gonna all oppose.
Okay, duly recorded, thank you. Okay, 8.2, Metro Vancouver Director, David Hawking.
Thanks, Gary. I'll,
I'm going to defer those till after, so the committee can hear the next decisions, and then we can go home.
Would be great.
Well, I don't think this isn't gonna take very
I'll
long.
be brief. Yeah, we've got a long agenda, so I'll be brief, and I'll send a link around to these. So I can report on the Climate Action Committee about a week and a half ago, and there were really interesting presentations on what's called Sustainability Innovation Funds, and this is a funds that Metro Vancouver has been saving basically since 1994, and they just started spending about a year and a half ago, so quite remarkable pieces of work that are underway. And some of them they all will help us in a number of ways, but there's some that are quite important. I'll just mention them all. There's one, an approach to look at our sewage treatment that will actually reduce costs, but will eliminate the, some of the micropollutants, the pharmaceuticals, for instance, or almost entirely eliminate them, as well as producing biogas and liquid biofuel, which is really the holy grail of sustainability, to produce a liquid fuel. So quite a remarkable, it's a $3 million investment over 6 years with UBC, so it's really quite fantastic work, global leading work. Some work on climate literacy, and this is to do with Metro Vancouver's climate looking forward to 2050, and that it's rather than sort of trying to convince all of the public that we need to do something about this, it's actually working targeted at specific groups who can take action, such as municipal staff. So there'll be workshops and presentation kits and so on for municipal staff on issues such as the Federal Municipal Natural Assets Initiative, like really important stuff, and so that can be part of asset management. So some good work for us. 3 others, a sustainable infrastructure and building design guide. So looking at our own buildings. So do you use LEED? Do you use what kind of systems should you use? And so they'll put sort of those things together, the step code and LEED and so on, so we could have some guidance on that. Transit-oriented affordable housing implementation, a calculator that will help you figure out the value of transit, close transit locations, such as Snow Cove. And one final one, looking at the contaminants in the water treatment plants from new things, such as forest fire ash, fire retardants, and microplastics. So looking at whether the sewage treatment plant can actually, well, whether we have a whole lot of that stuff now arriving and whether the sewage treatment plant can deal with it. So that'll be information that will be useful for us as well. So I'll send you links to all of those reports.
That'd be awesome, thank you. Very good.
All of them passed.
Oh. Island Trust Municipal Trustee passed.
Sure, okay, I'll
Vice
keep
Chair.
it brief, yes. The Islands Trust budget consultation has closed, and I'll be at a financial planning committee meeting tomorrow online. And I will hear the results of that consultation, and there's been a bunch of work done. Michael, just so you know, there's been a bunch of work done on figuring out why the Bowen amount is the amount it is, and what, how was it calculated, and how could it be better in the future and better to explain it, and that kind of thing. And so there's a bunch of work happening on that front, and we'll get to talk to Islands trustees about that. The executive committee is coming to meet with Bowen Council on March the 4th at 4 o'clock, if anybody's interested. I'm not going to go through some of this stuff. The good things happening on other islands that I think we'll be able to watch too. There's a shoreline protection project in the works for Keats Island, just off here, that I'm involved in, and Hornby had a groundwater workshop. Anyway, some of these places that I'm going to, I'm finding out things that I can bring home, I think, to Bowen Island, and we'll have a sea level rise workshop coming through our partnership with the Islands Trust to Bowen sometime in the next few months. And next Trust Council meeting is March 12th to 14th on Gabriola, which is just off of Nanaimo. So if anybody would like to attend a Trust Council meeting, Michael and I will be there, and on Gabriola Island. That's all.
Great, thanks.
Gary, if I may,
Yes.
just very simply, because I think so, thank you, Sue Ellen. I thought it was, but can I take it now that the meeting on Bowen with Islands Trust is confirmed for the 4th
Yes, correct.
at 4 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I think we can move on because lots of stuff happening. I think Sue Ellen's covered it, and probably the next thing will be preparation for that meeting here. So I'm done with this one, Gary.
Correct, okay, thank you, Michael. And, okay, so Councillor Nicholson, update Council on Metro Vancouver Regional Parks.
So I've included a written report in the council agenda. There's a link there to the agenda package and the meeting presentations for the last Parks Committee meeting, which was on the 6th of this month. And I think some of the things that came through committee also went to the board. We looked at the sustainable infrastructure and buildings policy, and one of the key points there was that Montreal is looking at adopting Energy Step Code Level 3. And they also mentioned, the staff person mentioned something called Envision Gold, which I'd never heard about previously, and I'll look into. And he said it was the emerging preferred option for buildings. So there's some digging to be done there. And we were also told about, and I'm not sure if it's the same project you were talking about, David, the project at Parkland Refinery.
It's at Annis's and Parkland.
Yeah, so it's taking sludge and turning it into usable oil.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, very interesting. There's a small program that's offered through Pacific Parklands, which is the foundation side of the regional parks. It's called the George Ross Legacy Stewardship Program, and they have a practice over some years of giving grants to community organizations that are engaged in stewardship activities in the parks. And they're introducing a new grant category for smaller, less organized groups. So if you were lead warriors and you weren't a registered nonprofit, there are now these small grants for $2,500 for local stewardship projects. This is subject to board approval. There also was a lengthy discussion of parking at some of the parks, particularly Grouse and Belcara, and the challenges that park management and the local communities face when they're just completely overcrowded. Belcara is quite a nightmare at times. The following day, on February the 7th, 8 Metro Vancouver Park staff came to Bowen. The purpose of the meeting was to introduce the new head of general manager of Parks and Housing to Bowen Island. So we did a bit of a walkabout at Crippen and in the Davies Orchard and at Grafton Lake. And my expectation is it will be the first of quite a few visits during a period of potential park expansion. So our next meeting's on March the 13th.
Any indication when they might start on Davies Orchard?
They have started already in terms of design work.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as outreach to the local community, I don't have a timeline on that at this point, but it's definitely early this year.
Oh, it will be?
But it's expected
Great.
to go forward.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good news, thank you. Okay, Councillor Morris.
Councillor Morris.
Yes.
Council, TransLink, at the Mayor's Council, there is a website for TransLink, and if you go under governance, you can get to the agendas and the public meetings, and most of them are public, most of the decisions, unlike in previous years. The major discussion and decision at the last meeting was the extension of the light rail or rail transit of some kind from the extension from Arbutus out to UBC rather than the B-line bus. And so the next there was a lot of discussion about, well, how does that support regional transportation and what's in it for the rest of the region and so forth. And amazingly, people from Surrey and Delta and all sorts of people came to speak in support of the extension. It was amazing the number of people that were out at UBC and where they come from. And so the next phase is to decide SkyTrain type technology, which doesn't mean SNC Lavalin, doesn't mean Bombardier. So is going to be the type of technology that would be looked at as the way to do it. So that's still in the study stages. So that's the major discussion that was at that. And then a presentation from the TransLink staff who were asked to present to the provincial committee that's designing the ride-hailing regulations. And the general consensus of that report, they were given 4 specific questions to answer and nothing else. They only answered 3, the 4th was not in their bailiwick. And the 4th was what class of driver's licenses should be used for ride-hailing drivers, so they didn't respond to that one. But the other was service boundaries and balancing supply and service and what criteria to use in establishing pricing and fare regimes. So they were supportive of having broader service boundaries so you don't end up with all the service being in Metro Vancouver, downtown, that type of thing, and also for maybe time of day pricing, and they had suggested perhaps a base fee or that could be used to then supplement people for that last mile at 1 o'clock in the morning to try and supplement fares for that. So the whole thing is before the provincial committee, so who knows where it's going to go at this point.
Any suggestion of timing on that?
No.
No?
Next year, I think, there was a lot of push. It's not something that seems to be really high on getting done quickly.
So just a question, do we get a vote for things like the SkyTrain technology as a?
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing. It's like Metro. There's one vote for everybody around the table, or somebody can call for a weighted vote. And the January meeting, or the December meeting, Mayor McCallum called for a weighted vote. So five vote, people voting carried the day. If it had been a single vote, it wouldn't have carried. This one was a single vote, and it wasn't, no weighted vote was called.
So our vote is worth as much as Vancouver's vote?
Oh, on an around the table vote, but if somebody calls for a weighted vote, then I think Vancouver's got like 30 votes and we've got 1. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Alison. Okay, business arising from the minutes, and this is 9.1, so it's me, and approval of the design drawings for the Fire Hall and Emergency Operations Center project. To make it perfectly clear, all we're doing at this point in time is going to our design team to price the fire hall on lot 3. I don't know how much work will be done on excavation, but we're certainly just going to price the building itself, and that's not going to change. We have to know where we're at on that. We have to know how much it's going to cost us if we have enough money to do it. If we don't, it's all part of the matrix with all the community lands. We have to evaluate everything we're doing here. It's a responsible thing to do. And if we don't understand how much this fire hall is going to cost us, we can't carry on anywhere. We can't go back, we can't go forward. So this is what this is all about. Now I'm going to go to A here, and I don't know who wants to take the lead on that, David?
Sure, thanks, Gary. So
Yep.
I've got a report that the 3 of us signed here, and along with 3 recommendations. And for the folks in the audience, some of you, I guess, will access this looking at it online, but you don't have hard copies, do they?
No.
So we got 3 recommendations, and this was written a little while ago, and things have moved along. So 2 of the recommendations we can drop, and I'll explain what those are and why. So the first recommendation is that council consider establishing a major projects working group to oversee the planning and implementation of the major projects currently anticipated, including the fire hall, to ensure plans are integrated and optimized to make the highest and best use of public funds, community assets, and staff time. So just for other folks, just before this meeting, we had a staff workshop where we're sort of finalizing our strategic plan for the year, and we decided...
Council workshop.
A council workshop. I'm sorry, did I say staff? Yeah, council workshop, sorry. And one of the things we decided on, it will be in our plan, is to have a major projects working group, and I forget what name we gave it. It was
Capital projects.
Capital projects.
Committee.
Anyway. So anyway, we decided to do that, which is great because it's sort of looking at all of them together to make sure that we're doing things well. So that, we don't need that anymore. The third was that the council direct the finance committee to facilitate an assessment of the value of the community lands in order to understand the full opportunity cost of the potential uses of those lands. And at item 10.1, the finance committee made the same recommendation. So we can drop that one as well because we'll be discussing that in half an hour or whatever it is. The middle one, however, I will read, and I'd like to put it on the floor and then I'll speak to it. Sure. Okay. So the council directs staff to conduct a review of the full cost of the proposed fire hall within the context of change conditions. These changes include higher than anticipated levels of long-term debt, the need to initiate a complete other major projects during the current council term, an increased focus on the community lands to address community needs, higher construction costs, and higher land values. So that's what so I'd like to move that. I guess I'll move that and second it. So then I'll speak to that.
Yes.
I'll speak to that. So as Gary said, this is obviously a contentious and difficult topic. We've got about 50 or so letters. I read every single letter. I appreciated all the work that people put into those letters. I agreed with a lot of them. I disagreed with some of them, but I appreciated the words of all of them. And I want to speak particularly to, there are a handful of letters that opposed this recommendation, this report and recommendation, because they felt that we would be wheel spinning, looking at stuff that's already been done. And we don't want to do that. We feel there's work that hasn't been done, and that's what we feel is needed here. So I'm just going to spend a moment then to talk about the change conditions that we have here now compared to when much of the work of the Fire Hall Working Committee was done, or steering committee. And then I'll talk a little bit about some of the work that I think still needs to be done, and then sort of perhaps make a bit of a recommendation about the direction. So first of all, change conditions. We all heard back a while ago that we were going to build a fire hall, and it would cost, we would have a long-term debt of about $3 million. We also, just last year, booked another $2 million of long-term debt to actually pay for the community lands. And for the meeting that we just had, we talked about an additional $4 million. So rather than $3 million of long-term debt, it's $9 million, potentially $9 million of long-term debt, which is quite a significant difference from the perspective of the affordability of the community over time. The work that we feel wasn't done is, and that's why we said in this document, the council directs staff to conduct a review of the full cost of the proposed fire hall. We want to include opportunity costs because we feel that opportunity costs were not included in any of the work that was done up to now. Basically, it was as if the land, whether it's in Lot 1 or Lot 3, the land is free, but of course it's not free. As one of our previous speakers pointed out, that lot might be worth $3 million, $2 million, we don't, maybe $5 million, we don't know what it's worth. But we know it's probably worth quite a bit from other sales. So that makes it not a $3 million fire hall, but it may be a $5 million or maybe a $6 million fire hall. That's quite a difference. So what else could we be doing with that land? And that's why I'm very pleased that we've now got a mayor's committee that is going to look at the value of the community land, so we'll get a sense of what that's worth. So where do we go from here? You all know that for a couple of years now I've opposed the fire hall in Lot 3. I went and spoke to council in public comments a couple of years ago. I spoke at the public hearing again a couple of years ago. However, I recognize that within our council, I'm going to get voted down. It's in all kinds of discussions we've had, it seems like it would be probably 4-3. So what I'm proposing then is that we instead look at shrinking the fire hall down to somewhere around half an acre, using some of the work that Kathy and staff have done, and by making it so it's a back in rather than drive through, and without all that parking at the back. So then we've got a new half acre of some sort that we would have considerable value. So what could we do with that? And how could we is there something, could we sell that land, could we use it for something else? And one possible thing we could do is we've got some housing we need to put on lot 3, and we also need to put a health center on lot 3. We've had requests for that. So there's the possibility of putting the health center perhaps might fit best, or maybe some housing, or maybe some combination, I don't know. But it's something we can look at, is the opportunity to find out what the opportunity cost is by using all of lot 3 versus shrinking it down to half an acre. So that's why we are recommending that we do a review of the full cost of the proposed fire hall.
All right. You have a recommendation on the floor, it's been moved and seconded. Do you want to change it at all, or do you want to rescind that, put something else in there? You mentioned that you haven't rescinded it.
I seconded it.
It's seconded as it is. I think we'll leave it like it is, Gary. I mean, I'm also recommending we look at other uses back there, but really it's getting a sense of what the full cost is. Is there opportunity cost? Is there some opportunity available? And so if we look at the full cost, I mean, there's some direct costs, like there's a fill that we need to put at the back of that site to flatten it all. There's the retaining wall that we'll need at the back, and there's paving that goes around the back. Those are direct costs that we could have. But there's also the opportunity cost that I'd like an assessment of that as well. So that's what I'm.
Okay, thank you. So,
Yeah, I'd like to speak in favor of this motion, and I was part of the discussion, obviously, that led to this. I'm seeing changes that have happened since we approved the Lot 3 site. And those changes, to me, look like housing is now recognized as a crisis, affordable housing. Where I'm not sure that it was at the time. Other fire halls have affordable housing built in them and around them. BC Hydro rates are rising, so that'll lead to rising operating costs. We haven't talked about the operating costs of heating this big building, or in-floor heating for the bays where the fire trucks sit, or heat losses through the back wall of doors. I'm concerned about the affordability. I'm concerned about a little bit about the processes that have happened. They haven't been as transparent as I'd like. I just think it's wise to revisit it now that we're in this new council. Indoor meeting space, well, you know, we've got the Cove Commons and we've got the community center coming. Could there be multiple use spaces that everybody could use? I'm wondering about the library lot availability. It's never been considered as a spot for the fire hall, and yet there it is, flat, and it's out of the ferry traffic. I was looking at, as somebody who regularly is late for meetings, or almost late for meetings because I'm stuck behind the ferry traffic coming off the ferry. I know it's just a rush minute, but you do sit there waiting for the traffic to go by. And I wondered about putting a fire hall on one side when so much of the island is further on away. And I looked at the fire underwriter survey here from 2013, and this is the one that had the 8-minute response times and things like that. And I wondered, did the response times take into account ferry congestion in the cove and fire trucks needing to navigate that? And I found, by just doing a search for the word ferry, I found from discussions with fire department staff, it appears that there may be access issues for potential location 3, lot 3, caused by ferry traffic. This should be further analyzed, as it may hinder response beyond the scope of the study. So I wondered if that work had been done, because I hadn't heard about that. And I've had that expressed to me from members of the community. What do they do when the ferry lineup is happening? So this makes me question just a little bit. Are we ready? Do we have all the expert reports? Have they all been done? Maybe they have and I missed it. And that's possible, and I'd love to be an ally, and I'd like to support this, but as somebody who gets stopped in traffic there waiting, I wonder what a fire truck would do. Is this putting us in a position where we're going to have to build a turn lane in the road later and widen the road? I just wonder about what impacts that might might have. I just think we need to take a wide-angle view as a council of all the things we've got. I don't see this as a stop. I see it as a pause, look around with the fresh council, recalibrate with, these changes here, and keep an eye on the bigger picture. And that's why I'll be voting in favor of this motion to conduct a full review of the full costs.
Rob?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks for the comments from some of the earlier speakers. I'm sort of the new guy on the block, haven't been, I know David, you're new too, but you've dealt with this issue for years. And Hugh, your comment about, you know, this has been going on a long time, you know, let's get this done. I thought a lot about it. And I think there's a lot of people in the audience that I've had meetings with. I sort of keep track of how many meetings I do per issue. It's been 34 for the fire hall, each one about an hour, 2 hours long.
Point of order.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Council.
Speak
Not
to
the
council.
audience.
Sorry, my apologies. So I've put a lot of thought into this, and also to see, is there something we can switch around here, or what's the proper way forward for this? And there's two key comments within our motion that I think sort of get to the heart of this. The one is to ensure that our plans are integrated and optimized to make the highest and best use of public funds, community assets, and also our staff time. And you see that reflected through this entire agenda tonight about taking a wider look. That's why I mentioned about the mayor's task force. I agree with that. We need to have this look, and it hasn't been done in the past, and that's a concern for me. The other is the title, and the title was very specifically picked. It is expediting the fire hall within the current context. We have a community center project that's coming forward right now. 30 years we've been on this. So if you think 10 years for the fire hall is a long time, this could potentially drag on. If we get back a report that says it's a no-go, where do we go from here? So that's a concern, and I do not want to slow this fire hall project down. If that's the thought amongst some people, that is not my intention. I honestly feel that this is going to expedite our fire hall, and it should have probably been done a hell of a lot faster, but we are where we are right now. So that's why I'm going to be that's why I helped write up this motion. You know, Councillor Hawking mentioned we have multiple projects going on right now. We have about 5 of them, 4 or 5, depending on which ones you want to count as capital projects. But they all involve our community lands. They're all looking for space. You saw that with Birch just a minute ago. You saw it with the health center. Through the election, it was very clear people wanted to see housing in a walkable cove, diverse housing in a walkable cove, especially for young families and for seniors downsizing. Well, we got one chunk of land, lot 3 in the cove. I think it was very clear in the election what people wanted, and also the community lands workshop. So I don't think there is broad agreement about from the community that we want a fire hall in that location. For myself, I think it's very key that as a community, this should be a celebration. I think Brian once mentioned to me this should be a point of pride. I totally agree. But right now, I don't think we're there as a group. I think there's division right now. For me, there's definitely division in the community. One of the earlier presenters brought up all the letters. Running through the election, I talked to hundreds of people. You get a pretty good idea of where people are at, and I do not see support for the fire hall in Lot 3. And that's a concern for me. Even our advisory committees, and we have a lot of them, Advisory Planning Committee doesn't think it should be a Lot 3. Finance Committee has been frustrated about not looking at it. I've been to 3 finance meetings on a community center, not on the fire hall. They haven't really been engaged in 2 years. Why is that? That's a concern for me, especially when I hear some of the big money that we're boiling right now. I think we need to be rowing together. As a council, we're split right now. As a community, I feel there is a big split right now. This is going to be, we should be cheering this project on. This should be a point of pride. We're going to be spending $3+ million, but probably $5 or $6 million. And we should be moving by that center and saying, hey, this is our fire hall, we're happy about this. I don't want half the community feeling like this was a bad decision and it's gonna take 30 years of higher taxation to pay this down. So I think we have an opportunity here. We have not put one shovel in the ground yet to date. This is our chance to take a sober second look. I don't think it needs to take long. I think it will speed up the processes, and it is also going to speed up the processes for all our other capital projects moving forward, because this is going to have a total downstream effect on affordable housing, on the health center, on all of our projects moving down the road. And I just feel we need to be rowing together in one direction and on the same page, and it's going to facilitate all our projects moving forward. So I hope it will get support, and it's definitely my intention to move forward all these projects by doing it cohesively and doing it as one team and not as a divided group.
Thank you, Drew. Allison?
Do I get 10 minutes too?
That wasn't 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
7.5.
I guess I'd just like to draw everybody's attention to the fact we had a borrowing referendum in 2005 to acquire the community lands. The stated purpose of that referendum was to acquire lands for community uses. If we were acquiring lands for developing and reselling, we would not have gotten the price we got from Metro Vancouver. They specifically wanted to know what we were going to do with the land. We got a good deal from them, so it was fortunate. We felt that we would be able to sell the land we did not need and was not best served for community uses to pay back some of the debt. For reasons I explained before, we never quite managed to get a lot sold. We've actually been at this since 2003, so in my arithmetic, that's 16 years. Not quite as long as the community center, but close. And we evaluated a whole bunch of lands. The library lot was looked at initially, and there's a member of the public with us today who was part of the committee when we did that. And it was not deemed to be, the site wasn't flat enough, the access was too steep off one side, and onto the main road, and the curve was not good on the other side. So we ended up looking at 3 other pieces. If you want, I can dig out the files where we analyzed that lot. We have been at this for a long time. We need to make a decision and get on with it. We can come up with all sorts of reasons why we paid our share of the purchase price for that lot of the $2 million is roughly $110,000. So not a big opportunity cost. And we're not in the real estate development business. We're in the business of providing the services in the best areas and the best possible service for our community. And Lot 3 fits that definition. It's right beside where if you put other land behind there, how are you going to access it? It's way it's sited right now. It's ideal to have the medical clinic right beside it because the driveway access to the back will allow the ambulances to get into the back of the medical clinic without them having to create another separate driveway for the ambulances. So I could go on and on and on and on and on, but we need to make a decision. It was very clear when we borrowed that we were borrowing to buy land for community purposes. And that land has always been designated for village institutional uses in the OCPs going back pre-1996. So we need to get on with it, and I'm not in favor of your motion at all.
Maureen?
I won't speak for very long. I was surprised by the report that you prepared, and I'm glad that you've withdrawn the first and the second recommendation because things have moved on or they were going to be dealt with elsewhere. When I look at the resolution, the recommendation that's here, and I try to figure out how it would be done, what you've actually said is that council will direct staff to conduct a review of the full cost of the proposed fire hall within the context of changed conditions. So the work is being given over to staff. And I wonder what staff would do with that kind of direction if they're being charged to look at costs. The recommendations that we have before us on the agenda, that council authorized Johnston Davidson to proceed with the working drawings and construction estimates as outlined in the report of the corporate officer. One of the outcomes of council authorizing Johnston Davidson to proceed is that we would get some information about the costs of the fire hall as it's presently conceived. And in the discussions with Johnston Davidson, it was very clear, to me at least, that they were prepared to hear some of the concerns about the size of the lot and the design of the building. But I really would like to get from professionals who we've been working with those construction estimates so that we actually know a little bit more about what we're talking about here. The other thing is that in our strategic planning process, and this is in part why I was really surprised to see this come forward, we were addressing some of the concerns that are expressed here through the establishment of the Mayor's Committee on the Community Lands. We were addressing them through the Capital Projects Standing Committee, or whatever we've ended up calling it. So those concerns are not being ignored. They're being addressed in a different way than simply taking a bundle of concerns and directing staff to do something with those concerns. So for those reasons, and a whole lot more, including the bottom line, we have to get on with this. And I will be supporting this recommendation.
All right, Michael? Yeah?
What, you're not supporting their recommendation?
Not supporting your recommendation,
No.
supporting the
The recommendation
recommendation
that's
to
in
go
the
with
agenda.
Johnston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From,
Michael?
oh,
Gary, I'm actually going to speak in support of what Maureen has just said, Councillor Maureen has just said, and also Councillor Alison Morse has just said. And I don't think it serves to repeat it. I think they've covered the ground. And I would like to see us authorize this step. I'm not in favour of the draft motion. I am in favour of the recommendation. And it serves us little to repeat I think the excellent points brought up by both of those councillors. So I'm in favour of the recommendation. I'm not in favour of the draft motion.
All right, thank you, Michael. Okay, any further discussion?
This is of the recommendation from
no, the draft motion.
Draft motion.
Hope, can you just read that so there's perfect clarity?
That council directs staff to conduct a review of the full cost of the proposed fire hall within the context of the changed conditions. These changes include higher than anticipated levels of long-term debt, the need to initiate or complete other major projects during the current council term, an increased focus on community lands to address community needs and higher construction costs and land values, the identification in the community lands workshop of housing as the focus for Lot 3, and the general rejection of the fire hall in that location is of additional concern. Is that perfect?
Perfect. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, it is defeated. It is defeated.
May I make the next motion?
Yes, you may.
The council authorized Johnson Davidson to proceed with working drawings and construction estimates as outlined in the report of the corporate officer dated February 1st, 2019. Am I reading the right one, Hope? That a staff working group be established to oversee the fire hall and emergency operations center project and liaise with Johnson Davidson, and that the chief administrative officer, fire chief, deputy fire chief, corporate officer, and emergency program coordinator be appointed to the working group for the purpose of providing regular updates to the fire hall facility steering committee and regular project reports to council.
Thank you. Seconded by Maureen.
Could I sever them, please, Gary? Because I'd like to support number 2 and provide an amendment for number 1.
Okay, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other, so do you want to read the?
I'll read number 2 then, if I could.
Well, I think we should probably do it in order.
Do it in order?
Yeah.
All right, so,
Would you like me to read it?
no, I'm going to propose an amendment for number 1. So it's the same First sentence, the council authorized Johnson Davidson to proceed with working drawings and construction estimates as outlined in the report of corporate officer dated February 1st, 2019, but with a standard back-end design rather than drive-through approach, and with parking limited to about 10 spaces, and that Johnson Davidson provide estimates for constructing a second floor above the fire hall quarters. So with that added to it, please.
Okay, second, Rob? Okay, any further discussion
This is on the amendment.
on the
Yeah.
amendment?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor, or do you have something to say?
Yeah, I'm going to speak in support of this amendment because I've been talking to people with fire. I was at the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities seminars on during the last few days of last week, and I talked to people about fire halls, and I couldn't find anybody who had a drive-through fire hall. Mind you, this was not a thorough poll or survey, of course, but I was surprised that the standard was, among the people I talked to, you back in, or you, and then you pull out. Anyway, rather than having all that space behind to use for vehicles coming around, and all that vacant spot. And I'm also just thinking about the future of the village, and what Lot 3 means to the future of the village. I like the idea of having the plans in place to be able to see, could we put another story on it, and what cost would that be to, you know, how could it be, would it be possible, basically, and if we wanted to make it so that it was a possibility, what would it cost? And that's, I also just like the way that this amendment makes it a little more modest, a little more, because I haven't seen the evidence to say that it needs to be so much bigger and bigger in the future. I don't think the numbers, I haven't seen the evidence that the numbers of fires and accidents is going up. So, anyway, so I'm in favor of the motion.
Alison?
I would speak against the amendment. There seems to be some confusion that a drive-through bay doesn't mean means you're going to necessarily drive the trucks through. There is all sorts of fire halls all over the place, including all the ones I've been to on Vancouver Island, including Gabriel Island, which Councillor Fast has been to with me, has doors at both ends of the bays. The common vernacular is to refer to those as drive-through bays, but you could back in and drive out at both ends. So you still need the turnaround and backing in. So we're talking about bays that have doors at both ends, not necessarily the trucks. But if you have to get the truck out that's at the back, you've got a door to get it out. So to do the initial costing based on the bigger thing, and then if it comes out to be very expensive, which I highly doubt, then you look at the other. To build a substandard, inappropriate building after all this planning and something that's going to last for 50 years is just not in the cards for me. And it's like an insurance policy. You may never have to call on it, but it's sure nice to have it when you need it. So I'm voting against the amendment.
Okay, Rob?
Yeah, so I was hoping we wouldn't get here. I suspected we may get here. And I very much want to vote moving forward with this fire hall. But there's some concerns I have that I think we can work out as we go through this process, as we see some of the designs come back, as we see some of the costs. But my first impressions on seeing the designs, you know, what I was looking for, what I hoped for was a compact design, something simple, low cost, low maintenance, and a building that covers our needs. And you know, we have a newer building that is seismically up to date across the island. A bit nicer looking than that in this location would be nice, but I mean, that was built at an absolute fraction of the cost of what we're looking at right over here. Some of the concerns that I think we will need to address, I'm willing to move forward on this with these concerns, but you know, I still don't see a good reason why we're moving an emergency operations center down into the fire hall. Right now it's temporarily in the Muni building. I think it makes sense to have it where the staff are instead of moving staff in an emergency. I still haven't had I still don't feel comfortable about that. It was brought up earlier, the meeting room space, 40, 50 room meeting room space. We're building a community center, 100 meters up the hill, that is reliant on rental for meeting room space. Why can't we use that meeting room space? Down at the library, we have more meeting room space. How much meeting room space do we need to create? And I think we're doubling up on a lot of these facilities right now. The heated bays, one of the councillors brought this up. You can imagine what it will cost to heat a garage. Imagine one with 6 fire trucks that size with doors on each side. I mean, that's going to be a massive ongoing operating cost. It hasn't been factored in here. Those bills are, BC Hydro's not going to give us free hydro for that. We're going to have to start paying for that. That's not part of these plans. And then, there's extra storage space, decontamination showers. It's a big project right now, and I was originally hoping for a simpler fire hall. But I think we will get there, because I think some of these costs are going to be very high moving forward, and we only have $3 million, and we need to prep the site and whatnot. The reason for these amendments are, these are a couple of the areas where if we move forward on the design with these, with the amendments that we wanted to make, it is going to compromise the design to such a degree that if we do come back, we're going to have to redesign the entire building. And that's my concern, because we're going to be spending a lot of money on these designs, upwards of probably $100,000 to $200,000 at the end of the day. I don't know what the exact point is. And the 3, again, are the drive-through design, the excessive parking, and wanting to have a cost estimate of having the ability to put in another floor of services. And that's something that has been lost from the original concept of the fire hall, which was to co-locate emergency services together. So to get the ambulance station in the fire hall, so when you make a call, the ambulance can come out if they're there instead of the fire department and the ambulance. And I think I believe very strongly that there's a lot of inefficiencies happening there, and it's costing us a lot of money and volunteer times. I saw the volunteers at Christmas Day, they all had to come out, and they were dealing with medical emergency, and the ambulance was there, and the police department was there. I mean, that's a recipe for burning out our volunteers, and I don't think it's good use of the equipment that we have, which is extremely expensive. We have almost $1 million in capital asks just this year in fire hall equipment. That's going to come on top of the cost of the fire hall, so that's a concern. Robert from Birch Housing brought up, we're going to make the best and highest value and maximize the use of the space. Great comment. Our current fire hall right now is 10 parking spots. Our plan is to decrease automobile traffic on Bowen Island. That's our 50-year outlook. And then we as a municipality are going to put forward a design with 30 or 40 parking spots. We're going to more than triple the parking needed. That to me doesn't meet with a lot of our plans, and I think is not very good use of space. And I believe that we can definitely on the site condense the fire hall to a much smaller footprint and leave space for Birch and the health center and not have these conflicts. So I'm very much in support of these amendments. It would keep it on lot 3. I think it would make the fire department happy. I think it would make the Hood Point residents happy. I think it would make a lot of other user groups that want to come into the land, give them an opportunity to get in there. And it would create maximum value for the remaining community lands, which are going to be significantly chopped up if we take up a full acre for these drive-in, back-in bays and parking and whatnot. So I hope that these amendments will be supported. And I do believe, I've spoken with a lot of people that are against having this on lot 3, on condensing the fire hall site. I think a lot of them would be on board, and I think we could have a bit more of a unified vision moving forward with the fire hall.
All right, thank you, Rob. Any other discussion on the amendment? Okay, I'll ask the question. All in favor? Opposed? The motion amendment is defeated. Now we have the other motion on the table. It's,
Could I just ask Cole to read it again?
yes, please. Thank you.
The main motion.
One that was just passed, or the
No.
main motion?
The main one.
It hasn't been voted on yet.
Number one.
The council authorized Johnson Davidson to proceed with working drawings and construction estimates as outlined in the report of the corporate officer dated February 1st, 2019.
So moved.
Now, are we splitting all these now, or are we gonna go with the original one?
That's the first one, we need a second.
We need to vote on that.
Okay, that's a second, okay. Any
No,
further?
no,
She
I
moved
moved
it.
it.
Oh, you moved it, I'll
I'll
second it
second.
then. I'll second it. And, any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor?
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, the motion is passed, 2 in opposition.
Sue Ellen, I'm sorry, you didn't raise your hand, were you in?
I
She
did raise my
She
hand.
did,
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
In
two
support?
opposed?
Yeah, yeah. The
Okay,
amendment
can you
having
read-
failed, the amendment having failed, I'm,
No, the amendment failed, so now we just voted on the main motion.
She voted in support of the main of the
Yeah.
motion.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and Hope, can you read the part 2, please?
That a staff working group be established to oversee the Fire Hall and Emergency Operations Center project and liaise with Johnson Davidson, and that the Chief Administrative Officer, Fire Chief, Deputy Fire Chief, Corporate Officer, and Emergency Program Coordinator be appointed to the working group for the purpose of providing regular updates to the Fire Hall Facilities Steering Committee and regular project reports to council.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you, David. Okay. Any further discussion on this one? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, Michael. All right, we're gonna move on. The section C on this is Kathy Lalonde, Chief Administration Officer. Daniel Martin isn't here.
This was just,
Hang on. Isn't there a third part, that the
Is there?
chief administrative officer?
No, we did that all in one.
Oh, you did it all in
Yeah.
one?
yeah, we did. The next one was just an information report from council.
Correct.
And the recommendation is that council receive the Fire Hall and Emergency Operations Center site layout report dated February 1st, 2019 for information.
Okay, second. Further discussion? All in favor? Thank you, unanimous. Michael, you okay with that one? Thank you. Can't see her hands.
All good, yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Morris.
Not, which
Where
one?
are we here?
Where's
Ken line one.
Over to you, Mary Andrew.
So it's open you get it.
Yeah, we have the recommendation from the Finance Committee for council's consideration, whereas the community lands are a resource for the community, that council investigate and understand the market value of those community lands before they are assigned to use. This recommendation was moved into the next one.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have to approve that?
I would suggest
Yes, sir.
10.1A, and I could read that out.
Sure.
Is that helpful?
So we should just receive the finance committee's recommendation for information?
I would suggest, unless council specifically wants to adopt that, but if I read the next recommendation, it
Yeah.
might all make sense. Whereas the Finance Advisory Committee has recommended that council investigate and understand the market value of the community lands before they are assigned for use. Whereas the Mayor's Standing Committee on Community Lands has been established to provide recommendations to council in relation to such community lands, including the development of a market valuation process, the identification of community lands to be retained as natural areas, future community purposes, or for development, lease, and sale. Therefore, be it resolved that council pause the direction to staff to enter into lease agreements with the Bowen Island Healthcare Center Foundation, Resolution 18159, and Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing, Resolution 18467, for I think, and Mayor Andrew, you were saying for up to a 90-day period,
Yes, thank you.
in order for the Mayor's Standing Committee on the Community Lands to report back to council, and that council reaffirm its commitment to provide leased community lands to the Healthcare Foundation and Birch.
Okay, I'll move that. Give me a second. Thanks, David. Okay, let's have a little discussion about this. Anybody?
I would like to draw everybody's attention to the other item in that agenda. I think there's an attachment,
Yeah.
which is, where's the resolution?
No, right here. You haven't got
To
it.
page 157 on the agenda itself.
What agenda item is that on, because page 1.
10.1A.
It's not listed posted in the agenda.
What are you looking for, Allison?
The list of
There was a
resolutions.
list of the resolutions that had been passed.
It's here. It's included, Councilor Morris.
Where is it?
It's just located underneath the large recommendation.
It's on page 157.
Well,
Here,
one-
if you're looking at the.
no, I don't have a one. Oh, Mayor, this is Mayor Andrew releasing.
Maybe I'll go
community
first
land.
and
Sure.
sort that out there. So I was at the Finance Advisory Committee meeting when this came forward. It was very, very clear that the Finance Advisory Committee wanted to look at all the lands, including the fire hall lands. That was actually the primary area that they wanted to look at. And again, I've asked for this before, are they gonna be looked at? I take it not, haven't moved the previous motion to go ahead with Lot 3. So saying in this motion here, using the Finance Advisory Committee's recommendation to now hold off on these two other projects, I don't think is the spirit of what the Finance Advisory Committee had proposed in that meeting. So, I mean, they were very clear that they wanted to look at all the lands, including the fire hall lands. That was their primary concern. It wasn't Birch Housing, it wasn't the health center. Their number one concern was the lost opportunities of putting the fire hall on lot number 3. So I just want to make that very clear with this recommendation, that that's being missed.
I found it. It's not on the yellow agenda for those people in the public on this one. There's a little sub-A and it's called previous resolutions provided for information. And some of them, Tim Rhodes has already reiterated, but council had agreed to a portion of lot 3 for the health center, direct staff to agreed. The other one is going ahead with the agreement to lease with the health center, and the other was, which isn't in here, yes, it is, Resolution 18-421, the council received a report from the planning consultant on Lot 3 as information and authorized staff to proceed with option 2 that would provide for a reduced lot size for the health center while maintaining the responsibility. The staff report was on proceeding with the subdivision of Lot 3 to create the lot to lease to the health center and the lot to lease to Birch, and the lot for the fire hall. The lot for the fire hall does need to be created so that we can start building or doing any work because we own the lot and we're building the fire hall. But it's important to create the 2 lots so you can lease them. So council has passed a whole series of motions agreeing to providing these specific lots, leasing it to them for nominal rates, and going ahead with creating the lots. So I can't support, I mean, if the mayor's standing committee on community lands has to look at lands, they can look at everything else. But I think we should go ahead with the lease documents and the subdivision so that Birch has land and the health center has land.
Okay, any further discussion?
I also won't be supporting this recommendation. I think we have to honor the resolutions that we made as a continuing body of council.
David?
I will support the resolution. I know that all of us spoke during the election. We wanted to see a community center, we wanted to see a health center, we wanted to see some housing in the Cove, including some below market housing, and we've got some good work that's been started on that. But we also, our finance committee makes a very clear point that the community lands are a remarkable asset that we have, and one doesn't use it's not financially responsible to use your assets without understanding how much they're worth. And so we need to get an assessment of what is the value of this land so we can understand what the possibilities are of making recommendations to move forward that address the things that give us what we're looking for, but also can help us by paying off some of our long-term debt or making a contribution towards the community center so we don't need to borrow as much money. So I will support this.
Joe?
I'm going to be speaking in support of this motion too, partly because I think we need to take this look ahead to integrated community uses of the community lands down the road. And how can we do it incrementally instead of just one big project per lot? Then you end up with this sort of strip mall effect that I've been driving through on the outside of Nanaimo. Whereas we could have, be looking towards, some of the people will remember the old Snug Cove plans, which are now sort of integrated into a community plan, and the idea of a denser, walkable village, a more complete community, there could be more housing there. I think there is an urgent need for various kinds of affordable housing, including for middle class people that can't even get in now, let alone where we started out at the beginning of last term, which was for the worker bees down in the businesses, right? And so I think there's various kinds of housing, could be other things too. I think we need to look at the operating costs of all these facilities that we're building. We've never had them before, except for the library. Even this building is rented. We need to think about how are we going to pay to keep those buildings open. I know people who live in Whitecourt, Alberta, where they built a big swimming pool. Excuse me, where they built a big swimming pool, and then they found within a couple of years that they had to close the pool for half the time because they couldn't afford the staff to keep it open, and the chemicals and the heating and all that. So just to think about it's one thing to build it, it's another thing to keep it open and keep it running with staff in it and programs and all that kind of thing. That's the main part of what I want to say, and I like the idea of involving the Finance Advisory Committee, because I'll point out that there was another resolution from Council, that was 15304 from October in 2015, that the Financial Planning Committee would work with that the Fire Hall Steering Committee would work with the Financial Planning Committee, and I haven't seen that one. So I'm happy to see this coming in to the picture now, at least about the community lands, and hopefully some aspects of the fire hall as well. So I'll be voting in favor.
So, anybody else? Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Gary, I'm sorry, and I recognize I'm in a little bit of an outsider on this process, but when I look at this recommendation, I'm perfectly comfortable with what we're trying to do for the island, for the health center. I'm not sure I understand this fully, where everybody else gets involved, and I understand therefore let it be resolved onwards. It's the beginning part of the recommendation, and I'm not sure I'm so comfortable with, and listening to the conversation actually makes me more uncomfortable. Is there any thoughts maybe to drafting this? To Councillor Morse's point,
We could take out the first part of it, Michael.
I suggest.
The whereases.
I suggested to the mayor that we remove the whereases.
Yes.
And incorporating the other resolution that Councillor Morse referenced, what the recommendation would be that council pause the direction to staff to enter into lease agreements with the Healthcare Foundation, resolutions number 18159, and resolutions 18420.
Can you speak up so Michael can hear you?
I thought it was very loud. That council pause the direction to staff to enter into lease agreements with the Healthcare Foundation, resolutions 18159, 18421, and Birch, resolution 18467, for up to a 90-day period in order for the Mayor's Standing Committee on the Community Lands to report back to Council, and that Council reaffirms its commitment to provide leased community lands to the Healthcare Foundation and Birch.
Thank you very much. That I find as you've spoken it, that seems quite clear. And when you agree or disagree, I get it. And thanks for the clarification.
Thank you, Michael. Just before I go back to it, a little background information on this. This was part of my platform during the campaign, because we've got so much going on the island that it is time to pause and perhaps in reflection I don't know, we weren't completely organized going into our disposition of land. Not that that changes anything. I'm not trying to change anything on behalf of the Health Society or Birch. But it's about, and I explained it to Tim, it's about the Bowen Island municipality getting our house in order. And we've got the standing committee now on the community lands, and we're gonna go through and we're gonna evaluate all the properties, and we're just gonna sit back and then we're gonna say, okay, let's go back in and just have another look at this. And until we do that, it's irresponsible for us to carry on the way we're going. Now, having said that, I don't mind prioritizing both Birch and the Medical Society. We can definitely prioritize that. We can get in it right away because I know you're into fundraising and a whole bunch of other stuff. But we have to sit back and have a look at this before we go forward. And I understand all the resolutions that are in there. That's fine. You know, they're all going to be taken into consideration. There's no question. But we have to take a little bit of a pause and really rationalize everything we're doing here. Because one of the other things that happened is that there was a scream from the public about monetizing all this land. All of a sudden the fire hall was worth $28 million and what were we doing and this and that. And so, well, we can't give land to the fire hall. What about the medical center? What about everything else? So we have to just sit back, get the community back in, get the medical center in, get Birch into these committee meetings and say, where are we going with this? And at the end, we'll all be in a better place. But to carry on with the way we're going now, I think is totally irresponsible, and that's basically where I'm coming from on this. Allison? Maureen, yeah.
I heard comments made about we urgently need affordable housing and we urgently need different kinds of housing. Putting Birch on hold isn't going to help urgently need it. Everybody campaigned wanting a medical center. Putting it on hold isn't going to help it get along. Nobody is raising the fact that we've got a parking lot sitting on an acre plus of the land on lot 3, which is right there, prime, ready to go. So why are we all of a sudden picking on resolutions that we've already done for the health center and Birch? And nobody's mentioning that we've got lot 2 already zoned, ready to go with housing and multi-purpose housing. So it's a matter of sitting down and agreeing which one we're going to sell. Not moving Birch, not relooking at Birch, not relooking at the health center. Getting on with those 2 and the commitments we've already been made by the previous council. It's just too bad we didn't get on with the lease and get it done before the election.
Yes. Maureen?
From the perspective of Birch and the Health Center Foundation, they probably feel as though they've been on pause for a while.
6 months.
So the request that we have a 90-day period in order for us to report back probably feels like we'll be dragging things out a little bit. And the emphasis, you mentioned that there's a discussion now about monetizing the community lands and highest and best use. The highest and best use arguments that I am hearing have to do largely with the economic value of those lands, which is important, but those lands are community lands and there are other values that come into play. So while a lot may be worth $2 million, $3 million to somebody who is going to develop the land, that is not necessarily the best way for a local government to use its community assets to meet community needs. So I think that it's really important that as a council that we keep in mind that yes, we do want to pay back the debt on the community lands. The value of those community lands probably far exceeds what we incurred in order to purchase them. I have no objection to conducting some sort of market valuation of the lands, but I think it's probably somewhat of a waste of time, because as a local government, we have the ability through increased density, through rezoning, through permitting this, permitting that, we can jack up the value of those community lands no end. And you're not going to get a particularly clear market appraisal when you go out and ask for that, unless you're going to be prepared to identify a whole range of uses. And maybe a 4-story apartment block would be a good thing. Maybe a 1-story fire hall would be a good thing. Really depends on who's doing the looking and the kinds of values that are being applied. So coming back to my original point, which was that the health center in Birch have been waiting for quite a while in order to hear what on earth we're going to be doing with this. I'd like to ask why it's a 90-day period. Up to 90 days. And for the Mayor's Standing Committee on the Community Lands to report back to Council. What are we reporting back on? Are we reporting back specifically on the market valuation? Because that's what the whereases seem to suggest. And if we are reporting back solely on that one piece of the Community Lands Committee's work, why does it have to be 90 days? If we want to pause, and it looks like a majority want to pause, why can't it be shorter? Why can't it be 30 days?
It could conceivably be. That's the way we set up to 90 days.
Why don't you
Could be 30 days.
But why don't we give Birch and the health center a little bit more comfort and say that, you know, it could be 30 days and just make it a priority. We're not doing the market valuation. None of us is qualified.
No.
We're gonna have to hire somebody to do it. Hire somebody to do it fast.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with that.
Well,
That's
then
what it's
can
gonna take to move it through.
Yeah.
I said we prioritize it, and we could probably get it done in 30
Well,
days.
then, may I
if we
suggest an amendment to the first clause here?
Yeah.
And Bowen Island, I'll just pick up the relevant part, and Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing Resolution, such and such, for a 30-day, for up to a 30-day period, in order for the Mayor's Standing Committee on the Community Lands to report back to Council specifically on the market valuation of the community lands.
Which part of the community lands? Does that affect them?
The terms of reference were for the committee to come up with the market valuation process. That first whereas was specific from the finance committee. If you look at the second whereas, it includes not just a market valuation, but.
So you were thinking in terms of this 90-day period is simply coming up with a market valuation?
I wasn't.
process?
No.
I see in the second whereas that it says, including development of a market valuation process, the identification of community lands to be retained as natural areas, future community purposes for development, lease and sale. So I think it would be recommendations coming forward as to those things that are in the whereas, not just the development of our market valuation process.
Yeah, we're taking that whereas out of there.
Are we? Is that an amendment,
Well,
to take the whereas
we're
out?
thinking about it, yes.
Because I'm hearing two amendments are sort of on the table. One of them is to remove the whereas,
Yeah.
and the second one is to change 90 to 30. So maybe we could do the whereas.
We can do it. I said we'd expedite it. If you want to change it to 30 days, we'll put it in 30 days. I don't have a problem with that for Birch and for the Health Society.
I'm not moving, I think Maureen is moving that amendment.
I am moving that amendment. Oh, did you catch it?
I did.
Yeah. And,
So do you
but at
have
the
a-
same time, I'll bundle in and also strike the whereases, so we can vote on those.
Maybe you should do this too.
Do this too?
Hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then the first amendment is to strike the whereas clauses from
Okay.
this recommendation.
All right.
Do you have
I'll
a
second that.
second?
Yeah. Any further discussion? All in favor?
I'm quite happy with the whereases, but if that'll let us move forward, okay.
Move this
let's move
forward. Good. Okay, and the second
I'm
one?
opposed.
Oh, sorry.
to removing the whereases, because I think they
Yeah, they set
tell
it
you
up.
why you're doing it.
Yeah.
So set 6 for and 1 again.
Yeah.
What's your tally there? So this is the amendment to remove the whereases.
6 to 1.
Hasn't been called to a vote yet, all I have so far is mover and a seconder.
No, they just called the vote. So
Six-
we could
six
call
to
the
one.
vote again? No, we could, I don't think it was 6.
Okay, all in favor? Rob, are you in or?
I don't know what the hell's going on at this stage right now.
This is voting on taking the whereases out of that recommendation. Amendment.
I'm opposed.
Okay,
Okay.
so
Good for you.
let's, you had 5 people stick their hands up for in favor,
4 in
1 stick their
opposition.
hands up for
One didn't,
opposed.
so 6 to 1.
Mike did that.
Michael?
Hand up in favor.
Michael, you supported the removal of the
Yeah.
whereas clauses, or you did not?
He did.
He did.
Yes, I did.
You did. Okay, so that passes?
Yes.
So the
Okay.
second amendment, the council paused the direction to staff to enter into lease agreements
Did you say change 90 days to 30 days?
with, yeah,
No.
sorry.
Yeah, no, we could, yeah, sure,
That's the simple.
sure. Yeah.
The amendment will just reflect what the actual amendment is, so that's all you have to say.
Okay, so for a 30-day period, in order for the mayor's standing committee.
No, just change 90 days to 30 days.
90 to 30, so moved.
Okay, second.
Are we gonna get a chance to speak there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so,
Any discussion?
well,
Has it been seconded?
yeah, it's been seconded already. You know what? You know, Mr. Mayor, you just brought up, you know, moving forward would be irresponsible, we've not been organized on this. I totally agree, and this was the whole point of the motion way back, is let's get our heads around this instead of what we're doing right now, which is, you know, scrambling and trying to make up for lost things. And again, you know, yes, this should have been done years and years ago, and I just want to say, I'm pretty frustrated about it right now. I'm being asked to make decisions right now that I don't think are the right decisions, but, you know, it's sort of a decision between crap or worse crap right now. And I'm gonna make a crappy decision and go with this, but I will say I'm very frustrated, and a lot of this, if there had been some clear thinking done years ago, we wouldn't be in this mess right now.
Right.
Hopefully, we can reset here.
Yeah.
It's gonna be, we're not gonna have a full look at the picture anymore because we've already allocated lands. But I will say I'm pretty frustrated right now, and I don't think we're making the best decisions right now, but we're making probably the best decisions with what we've been handed right now. And it's too bad. It really is too bad, because I think we're gonna be losing out on some areas right now. But I am also very concerned about now putting Birch and our health center in this position. So, yeah, that being said, I'll probably vote with it.
Michael, or sorry.
Of course, I'm sympathetic to Birch and the health center. They're really important. But I agree with those words that you said, Gary, that we need to get ourselves organized and plan this carefully. And 2 points. Maureen, this is not, the job of the mayor's committee is not just simply to get the financial value, the market value of these lands. No.
I understand that.
That part of the work will be to do that, but it's to understand what are the best ways we can achieve our goals. Birch, community health center and so on, and some diverse housing in the Cove. What is the best way to achieve those goals, looking at in some sort of an integrated way, as Sue Ellen suggested. It'll take some time. We've got some people on that committee who actually know this kind of work and can help, but we need, I've heard them say, oh, we could do it in 60 days, maybe 90 days. Obviously, we want to move as quickly as possible, but it can't be done. You just need more time to pull people together and do the proper job. We need to do the proper job. Up to 90 days, do it as quickly as we can is, I think, what we need to do. Of course, I'm sympathetic to those two organizations. Absolutely, they need our help, but we need to make sure we do it in a way where we don't look backwards and say, what the heck did we do that for? We've got ourselves in another bit of a mess. Okay.
Can we vote on it?
Maybe we did.
No, I'm certainly.
So
not.
hope the motion would read for an amendment that up to 90 days be replaced with up to 30 days, or to 30 days. And that's all they're voting on,
Yep.
so.
Mhm. Go ahead, Sue.
I think the word pause might be giving us pause. I'm not sure that this would stop all the work of our good committees, our good community service committees that are doing all this hard work. 90 days, or up to 90 days, I think is realistic if we want an incremental, walkable future village that I think Lot 3 is integral to, more than just the being able to hook up the sewer lines and the parking, being able to drive around it, which we've already asked staff to do. I think if we want to make something that's incremental, we need to have all the pieces in front of us. I'm not sure that it's a stop or go thing. I think 90 days, that work can happen while other work is also going ahead, and won't those community groups be consulted, or maybe they will be, or at least they can continue doing their fundraising and those other things too. I just think, I'm concerned that this is turning into one of those black and white kinds of issues, and I'm not sure that it is. I think these things can happen at the same time, and I don't know if that word pause needs to be there. I think we just, maybe,
Are you speaking to the
groups
amendment that's what's on the
Yeah.
table right now?
yeah, so I think,
I thought the amendment was 90 days or 30 days, point of order.
so I'm going to vote in favor of 90 days. I'll vote against the 30. But I don't think that it's necessarily a pause. I think that a committee needs a little bit of time to do the work that's been outlined and that we passed earlier in this evening.
I agree, I don't think it can get done in 30 days, that's my issue. If we worked every day, I don't think we could do it for 30 days. Even if we just concentrated on Birch and the medical center, I don't think it can be done in 30 days. So, I don't know, what's everybody else think? Maybe you don't
Yeah.
think it's long enough, you think
Yeah,
it's long
no,
enough?
I keep it at 90. Yeah. Up to 90.
So what you need to do at this point, I know it's like 9:45. So let's call the question on whether it's going to be
The
amended.
motion
The
is
motion on the table
Motion on
is
the
30
table is
days.
30 days.
to
change
balance the
90
vote.
days to 30 days, so we need to vote on that.
Okay. No more discussion, all in favor of changing to 30 days,
90 days to 30 days.
90 days to 30 days. Okay.
3, Michael's got his
Opposed?
hand up.
Michael, are you up or down?
Yes, change it to 30 days, 90 days, it seems an eternity for people trying to raise money.
Okay, good.
I'll do it too.
You're going for 30 days? No, okay, now I ask for a vote.
Okay, opposed?
Opposed? 3 of us are opposed.
Yeah, okay, so
I
it passes.
saw
with
2
one
hands
vote.
go up.
Opposed? That's 3.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't looking at Gary.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll go 30 days, the motion passes. Are you okay with that motion?
So that's the amendment to the motion, so I'll make the motion now.
Yeah.
Correct.
Um,
The 30 days was passed, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
That council pause the direction to staff to enter into lease agreements with the Bowen Island Health Center Foundation, Resolution 18159, and Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing, Resolution 18-467, for a 30-day period in order for the Mayor's Standing Committee
Up to 30?
for up to 30-day period in order for the Mayor's Standing Committee on the community lands to report back to Council, and the Council reaffirms its commitment to provide leased community lands to the Bowen Island Health Centre Foundation and Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing. So moved.
All right. I'll second that. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? No. Okay.
How was Michael?
Michael, are you in favor?
Sorry, yes, Mayor,
Okay, thank you. So Allison Morris in opposition. So that resolution passes. All right, so items removed from the consent agenda. There are two of them. 12.8, Allison, do you want to respond to
I
that?
removed information item 12.8,
Correct.
which is the notice about the beeline construction in West Van.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if you want to weigh in on that. We're not residents of West Van, but having a beeline, as it's planned right now, is to go from 25th to Park Royal, and then the beeline will continue from Park Royal. So the deliberations of whether it goes from 25th to Park Royal. That means our 257, which we all take from 15th to Park Royal, would be expedited through the beeline route, if the beeline goes ahead. If it
Yeah,
doesn't,
12.8.
12.1. So do we want to weigh in which case I'll draft a letter?
So can we say that again, we'd be weighing in on saying yes?
We're in favor of having the beeline,
Yeah.
because it benefits the 257.
You sure?
Yeah, Allison's right.
All in favor of that?
Yeah.
Good, it's
And
unanimous.
can we also refer that to the Transportation Advisory Committee? Maybe they will, I guess if we've already said it.
We've already said it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you drive.
Yeah. With the information I have.
And you told Suzanne.
I pulled
3.13, yeah.
3.13, I just wanted to,
Colleen.
yeah. I just wanted to add a little bit, is that I just wanted to offer help to staff in writing this letter. Susanna did just a fantastic job over the last couple of years, and she really changed our ability to work well with BC Ferries, and so I just want to get back, and I'm happy to help staff write that letter, that's all. That's all I want to say.
That would be lovely, David, with your
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
involvement with her from the staff.
So I move that recommendation,
Oh, thanks. I'll second this, yeah.
okay?
Okay, all in favor? Thank you, pass unanimously. And I think with that, we're good.
That's it.
We're done for the open meeting.
And of course,
We had a question period, Ron was still here.
well, the question period, yeah, I'm trying to find it here.
I know, you're kind of.
It's the very last page.
Question period. Ronald,
The Maureen was talking about during the strat plan, you guys were talking about another committee, for the capital projects, is that on top of the Mayor Standing Committee?
Yeah.
So, but this hasn't been discussed in sort of this open
No.
meeting, so it's not a thing yet, but it's a
it's a
potential.
thought. Yeah.
Well, after all that, we're only
Thank you.
10 minutes behind. We were supposed to adjourn at 9:40.
All right. Okay, let's close
Don.
our. Oh, Don, sorry, Don, question.
Two questions, actually.
Oh, God.
Yeah, two. So, that was a big surprise what just happened, but, so, in 30 days, is all this committee gonna do is just be active for 30 days?
No, but it's gonna make a decision on those
Oh,
two,
just-
yeah, those two projects, hopefully within 30 days.
Okay, another thing, beeline, you should take a look at the beeline. It's not such a great thing after all. Ask the, what it's gonna do to the street traffic, parking, and effect on the small businesses along Marine Drive.
Yeah, I've got the presentation, but I think from our perspective,
Yeah, but I wouldn't, as a
as a gender egg
As a former president of the Chamber of Commerce there, I would say it's a bad thing to support on behalf of one small community, desperately dependent on its small,
Gotta look after ourselves.
well, yeah. Had to say it.
Yeah, thanks, Don.
Bye,
All right,
bye, Don.
bye.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Bye, y'all.
Bye,
We're
Ken.
moving into a closed, Tim.
Okay,
Yeah.
cupcakes, pizza coming out?
Bye, Ken.
What was that? Piece of pizza? Yeah.
I'd just like to say that, thank you. Our concern wasn't so much 90 days as it was being assured we would be on lot 3. And I don't know if that was clear to council.
It was
Well,
probably,
whatever was clear is
It's in the
unclear now.
it's in the resolution. 30 days could be a real pinch, and I hope it doesn't turn out to be negative because of the short period of time. But anyway, we'll discuss that, and you guys gotta be involved too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, there's no question, because you'll be part of the decision-making process. No question about that.
Thank you.
We've already had.
All right, Jim, thank you.